Hi all, this is Dr. Mamta Java, infectious diseases specialist and microbiology faculty at DAMS. In this video module, I'm going to discuss an important clinical vignette on infectious diseases. So the question goes like this. A 75-year-old patient presents with fever and wasting. He describes fatigue and malaise over the past several months and is concerned that he has been losing weight. On examination, he is noted to have a low-grade fever and a soft diastolic heart murmur is appreciated. Lab tests were eventful in the sense that they revealed a normocytic normochromic anemia and three separate blood cultures grew Cardiobacterium hominis. Which of the following statements is true about this patient's clinical condition? Your options are: option A, antibiotics are not likely to improve his condition. Option B, echocardiography findings will likely to be normal. Option C, he has a form of endocarditis with a high risk of emboli. And option D, he will likely need surgery. Now, the answer to this clinical vignette is option C, that is, he has a form of endocarditis with a high risk of emboli. Now, let me justify the answer in the upcoming few minutes. Why at all we are labeling it as a case of endocarditis. So I've highlighted the important pickup points which you need to focus on while reading such clinical vignettes. For instance, in this particular question, I've highlighted such important clues in green color. The patient we had was having fever, wasting, fatigue, malaise since several months. So he has been running a chronic course. His illness has been running a chronic course, and he's losing weight. Also, very importantly, he's having low-grade fever and a soft diastolic heart murmur was appreciated. Lab findings showed anemia, and extremely important clue in this question was that the blood culture was positive, and what grew out of the blood culture? Cardiobacterium hominis, which is a known causative agent of endocarditis. For diagnosis of endocarditis, we collect the blood sample, right? So, what exactly do we mean by endocarditis? Now, endocarditis means infection of the endocardium, which is the inner lining of your heart chambers and the heart valves. Now, there are several ways to classify endocarditis. For instance, based on the etiological agent, based on any predisposing factors like intravenous drug abuse or the absence of such factors, and then based on the temporal evolution of disease. Now, based on the temporal evolution of disease, we have got broadly acute endocarditis and subacute endocarditis. Acute endocarditis is a hectically febrile illness, has got very bad prognosis if you don't treat the patient well in time. The patient can die within weeks if nothing is done, right? On the other hand, subacute endocarditis is kind of lazy or laid back in the sense that this disease runs a chronic course. The cardiac damage which occurs happens very slowly, if at all it occurs, and the disease is very slowly progressive unless and until it is complicated by some emergency, for instance, embolization, which is going to block some important blood vessel, or there is a rupture of a myocardic aneurysm, right? And the clinical features of endocarditis are many, and I've highlighted in green color those specific clinical features which our patient was having in the question which we discussed. So the clinical features of endocarditis include fever, which our patient had, then chills and sweat, anorexia, weight loss, malaise, myalgias, arthralgias, back pain, heart murmur, okay, or a new or a worsened regurgitant murmur or arterial emboli. Now, other than these, other clinical features which our patient did not have include splenomegaly, clubbing, neurological manifestations, peripheral manifestations like Osler's nodes and all, and petechiae. You will read in detail about these manifestations in medicine. And what about the lab manifestations? Anemia, which was there in our patient, leukocytosis, microscopic hematuria, raised ESR, raised C-reactive protein levels, rheumatoid factor positive, circulating immune complexes, and decreased serum complement. Right? So there's an important criteria called as Duke's criteria, which you need to know about for diagnosing a case of infective endocarditis. It is not just based on a positive blood culture, but certain major and minor criteria are to be met with, which will be taught in detail in medicine. Now, my focus of discussion is going to be in this video module on HESIC organisms. HESIC is an acronym which is a group or a gang of bacteria which are important causative agents of infective endocarditis, and they're responsible for 3% of all cases of infective endocarditis. Guys, have a look over here. You can see a sad heart, apparently sad heart, which says I'm screwed. Why it is screwed? You can see I've labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've drawn five rod shaped bacteria which are literally, impinging their feet on this poor heart. And there was a purpose behind me using the red color to shade these bacteria, meaning to say that all these bacteria are gram negative organisms. They are gram negative rods, or some books say that they are gram negative Coccobacilli. Coccobacillus is a bacterium which is not perfectly, rod shaped like this pen is, and it is not perfectly spherical like a coccus. So na idhar ka na udhar ka, somewhere in between a coccus and a bacillus, that is a rod. So they are referred to as Coccobacilli also in certain books. Okay, for all practical purposes, we just refer to them as gram-negative rods, and we all know that on gram stain, which is the most important differential stain done in any microbiology lab the world over, the gram-negative organisms are going to appear red in color. Red is the color of negativity, khoon kharaba, war, bloodshed and all. So gram-negative will appear red in color, and gram-positive organisms are going to be appearing blue in color. Remember, blue is the color of positivity. Right, so you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the 5 bacteria, and they are all wearing a common cap. Now, the purpose behind drawing this cap is to help you all remember that they are capnophiles. The term capno means what? The term capno means carbon dioxide, and phi means to love. So, what do these bacteria love? They love carbon dioxide. So, it's very, very important that if we are suspecting infection by any of these bacteria in any patient, it's very, very important to incubate the sample of the patient in an atmosphere of 5 to 10% carbon dioxide. Okay, so basically you are bribing these organisms with carbon dioxide so that if at all they are present in the sample, they will grow on the culture medium. All right, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 important organisms you need to know. Collectively, they are referred to as the HESIC organisms. Now, HESIC is an acronym which stands for certain important members of the genus Haemophilus. For instance, Haemophilus, Afrophilus, Para-Afrophilus, Para-Influenzae. Right? Then A stands for Aggregatibacter actinomycetum comitans. C stands for Cardiobacterium hominis. E stands for Echinella corrodens, and K stands for Candida kingiae. So it's HACEK, HESIC organisms. Now, let us know something more about these organisms. Now, they are tough nuts to crack. They are fastidious or fussy organisms. Now, what do I mean by fussy organisms, or the ones which are tough nut to crack? In bacteriology, we can classify the bacteria as fastidious bacteria or non-fastidious bacteria. Now, I personally call fastidious bacteria as the fussy ones because they are nakrebas or tantrum throwing bacteria. They are not going to be satisfied or happy when you try to grow them on a simple or a basal medium like a nutrient agar. So they are not happy with the basal minimum nutrients which are there in simple or basal media like nutrient agar or peptone water. Instead, these are fussy organisms which are very, very hungry, in the sense that they need some additional nutrients to grow. So they will grow only on enriched media. So that is what is meant by fastidious organisms, fussy organisms. Right, and then HESIC organisms fall under also the category of slow growing organisms. They are very slow, laid back, lazy organisms. Why? They grow very slowly, and so much slow their growth is that if at all the clinician is suspecting HESIC organisms infection in any patient, the clinician should tell me specifically about it so that I can direct my lab technician to incubate the agar plate for a minimum of 30 days, because some of them are so slow growing that they won't produce any colonies until we wait for a period of 30 days. Right? So they are slow growing. Then they normally reside in the oral cavity. So they are basically in normal circumstances they are our friends only. They happily reside as commensals in our oral cavity, but and they are known to cause localized infections of the mouth, but in certain special situations they can cause serious systemic infections. Most often it is bacterial endocarditis. Now in what conditions do these friends become our enemies? These friends can turn into enemies or foes if at all there is some oral manipulative procedure such as dental extraction or any other dental surgery, if there is some nasopharyngeal infection, if tongue is manipulated in any way. For instance, somebody has gone for tongue piercing or tongue scraping has been collected for submission to the lab for examination of the tongue scraping sample for some other infection, right? And also when the patient already has a damaged cardiac valve. So all these situations, it is more likely to encounter cases of endocarditis by these organisms. Now why should it be like that? See, the conditions which you know traumatize our oral mucosa, like nasopharyngeal infection or any other buccal mucosal infection or tongue manipulation or any other condition which I told you just now. These lead to trauma to the mucous membrane. So these organisms jump into the bloodstream. Okay, jump into the bloodstream, and if suppose the patient already has a damaged cardiac valve, then it is all the more likely that these organisms are going to cause infection of the valve, and the patient will land up in endocarditis. That is why the dentists go for prescription of a course of antibiotics prior to doing some oral manipulative procedure. If suppose the patient, such a patient who has been appointed, who has been appointed for some dental extraction or any other oral procedure, if he doesn't follow the instructions of the dentist properly, misses his antibiotics or doesn't take them at all, then what will happen? Because during the trauma which occurs during the oral manipulative procedure, these organisms will jump into the bloodstream and they can cause endocarditis, right? And which is, as I said, which will be even more which should be even more expected if the patient's cardiac valve is already damaged from before, right? So this is about the situations in which Hissek organisms will cause endocarditis. Now remember that the most common cause of gram-negative endocarditis in non-intravenous drug abusers. This, guys, itself is a question. This is a very important question. Then what else about Hissek organisms? They are responsible for 3% of all cases of infective endocarditis in most of the series, and the valves which they commonly affect are the aortic valves and the mitral valves. Remember A and M, aortic and mitral valves. Okay, if I write this in Hindi, arm means common. So remember the commonly affected valves kaun si ho gayi? They are the aortic valves and the mitral valves. And a very important feature is on transthoracic echocardiography, valvular vegetations are seen in 85% of the patients. 85%, which is, guys, a pretty high percentage. And this is very important. The presence of vegetations is very important because embolization of these vegetations is very common. So embolization is a very common event in case of Hissek endocarditis. The last 2 points themselves are separate questions. Let me write a double Q to emphasize them a lot more. Now let us give some attention to each of the members of the Hissek group, the gang of bacteria. Now, first and foremost, the H of the Hissek group. As I mentioned in the cartoon which I showed you at the outset of the video, H stands for genus Haemophilus, and the important species of this genus which are responsible for endocarditis include Acrophilus, Parainfluenzae, and Para-Acrophilus. Now, remember these organisms in this order only. You have got Acrophilus, you have got Parainfluenzae. Remember A, P, and I. Acrophilus and Parainfluenzae species, they are responsible for most of the cases amongst all the Haemophilus species. Okay, amongst all these three species, the first and the second, Acrophilus and Parainfluenza, they're more frequently isolated. In other words, they are most of the cases amongst from the genus Haemophilus are because of these two species. And then the third one is the para-Afrophilus. Now another thing which I would like to I would like all of you to notice over here is the species. The species of genus Haemophilus which have got para in their names. These are the species which need only V factor for growth. V factor for growth, right? The genus Haemophilus has been named as Haemophilus because hemo means blood and philus, phi means to love. So basically, there are certain factors, certain blood growth factors like X factor and B factor, which are required by species of genus Haemophilus for growth. For instance, Haemophilus influenzae, which you read in your routine classes, it requires both X and B factors for growth. Now, those species of genus Haemophilus whose names begin with para, they need only the V factor. They do not need X factor. You can remember this by remembering para means away or pare in Hindi. So stay away from your X. Stay away from X, the X factor. Okay. Then Afrophilus. What about Afrophilus? Afrophilus needs only X factor. It does not need V factor. So example of a species which needs both X and V is Haemophilus influenzae, which anyways you read in your routine classes. Then in this video module, I'm telling you about the ones which need only V, that is para species, para influenzae, para Afrophilus. And what about Afrophilus? Afrophilus A for alone, it needs just one factor. Which one? It just needs X factor. Okay, X factor. This is an A1 generation, and which is very boastful about its X factor. You can remember it like that. Now, both the Afro species, another notable point over here is both the Afro species, that is Haemophilus Afrophilus and Haemophilus para-Afrophilus, they are catalase negative and oxidase variable, and some books say that now they have been clubbed together as a single species. The name is Egregatibacter Afrophilus. Now I am writing this as PQ. This is a potential question likely to be asked in the upcoming exams, especially the upcoming AIMS exam and PGI exams, right? Then Haemophilus para-influenzae on the other hand is oxidase positive, and 11 to 89% strains are catalase positive. Okay, so we basically cannot rely too much upon the catalase test in case of Haemophilus para-influenzae. It's not going to give us very great information about this organism. So this is about the H of Hesse group. Then we have got the A of the Hesse group. Now A stands for Egregatibacter actinomycetum comitans. First, let me justify its name. Egregati means to aggregate or to form groups or to come together. Bacter means rod. Okay, so this is the name of the genus. These are those bacteria which tend to arrange themselves in groups or clusters or jhund. Then the species which is notorious for causing infective endocarditis is Egregatibacter actinomycetum comitans. Okay, now let me read the name of the species in reverse. Comitans means to accompany, and actinomycetum actually refers to another bacterium called as actinomyces. Okay, so this particular species is called as actinomycetum comitans because the isolates of this organism are frequently accompanied by another organism called as actinomyces. Do remember that actinomyces also is our friend. It is also our oral commensal, and all the Hesse organisms also are oral commensals, and specifically this member of the Hesse group, iski colonies are frequently accompanied by the growth of actinomyces. Actinomyces on the other hand, remember it's a gram positive filamentous bacterium. In the entire bacteriology, the only two gram positive filamentous bacteria are actinomyces and nocardia, right? And Egregatibacter actinomycetum comitans is catalase positive and oxidase negative. Catalase positive, oxidase negative. And remember, it is the most common member of the Hesse group to cause endocarditis. Remember, A for A1 or number 1, this particular fellow amongst all the gang of Hesse organisms wins the race in the sense that this is the most common member of Hesse group to cause endocarditis. Alright. Now, next we have the C of Hesse group, that is Cardiobacterium hominis. Now cardio means heart, Bacterium means rod-shaped organism, rod-shaped bacterium. Hominis means man. So basically, this is a bacterium which is a rod-shaped bacterium of man, and it has got predilection to infect the heart and cause endocarditis, right? And these patients who land up with endocarditis with this organism, as was the case in our patient in the question which I showed you at the beginning of the video, the such patients have got underlying valvular heart disease or they have got prosthetic heart valves. Okay, so it's very very important to take proper history from the patient also, right? And the most frequently affected valve by this organism is the aortic valve. Aortic valve. Now, a new species, namely Cardiobacterium valvarum, has also been discovered, which is also implicated in certain cases of endocarditis, right? So this again is a PQ or potential question. Then next we have the E of Hesse group. Now E stands for Echinella corrodens. Echinella corrodens, right? Echinella has been named, this genus Echinella has been named after a scientist Ekins who characterized this organism, and he also showed the property of this organism to corrode the agar medium. Corrode means to form depression or pits in the agar medium on which this organism is growing, hence the name corrodens. Okay, now remember this organism lacks flagella, but very importantly it shows twitching or jerky motility. I am expecting this also as a potential question, especially in AIMS. Remember AIMS people had asked a question I think last year on the motility of gonococcus. In books, we generally say that gonococcus is non-motile, but the answer to that particular question was twitching motility. Twitching motility. Okay, so I think this could also be asked on the same line, because as per literature, some strains of gonococcus do show twitching motility. Okay, same way over here, this is likely to be asked because it's a very peculiar feature. This is a motile bacterium we are saying, but it doesn't have flagella. But it still is motile, and the motility is twitching or jerky motility. And then if it doesn't have flagella, what is the mechanism behind its motility? It is motile because of contraction. It is motile because of contraction of fimbriae. Motile because of contraction of fimbriae, right? Now, it's also easy to remember. Imagine somebody is running on a treadmill very fast. So same way, this organism is similar to analogous to a person who is exercising on a treadmill. Now, the organism is similar to the man who is exercising on the treadmill, and the agar on which this bacterium is growing is similar to the treadmill. So this organism is running on the agar, and in that process of running or in the process of being motile, it is going to cause the colonies are going to be having depressions or pits on the agar medium, right? So remember, it is motile. It's non-sporing. It's also easy to remember. As a general rule, we say that all the gram-negative organisms are non-sporing. The only two important bacterial genera which are known to produce spores are genus Bacillus and genus Clostridium. Okay, so just like all other gram-negative organisms, this organism also does not have spores, and it is non-capsulated. It's a facultative anaerobe, and very very importantly, this again is a potential question. The colonies of this organism smell faintly of bleach or hypochlorite. Okay, or hypochlorite. Now, let us have a look at the pitting or the corroded colonies of Echinella corrodens, which I was talking about just now. This is a chocolate agar medium, and if you see carefully, there is pitting on the agar medium. Okay, pitting or depressions of the depressions on the colonies on this medium. So this is about Echinella corrodens. And then lastly, we have got the K of the Hesse group. Now K stands for Kingilla. Kingilla, name of this genus has been allotted after an American bacteriologist, Elizabeth King. And the most commonly isolated species from clinical specimens of this genus is Kingilla kingi. Okay, so this is the king organism. Now, Kingilla kingi bacteremia can present with a petechial rash similar to that seen in meningococcus, that is Neisseria meningitidis sepsis. All right. In fact, Kingilla kingi organism morphologically resembles the Neisseria species, in the sense that it is also a gram-negative Coccobacillus. Gram-negative Coccobacillus. Now, I had enlisted some of the important, biochemical reactions of Haemophilus. Similarly, you also need to remember that the CEK of Hesse group, the CEK, that is Cardiobacterium hominis, Eichinella corrodens, and Kingella kingae, these three are oxidase positive and catalase negative. Okay, these are oxidase positive and catalase negative. Now, moving ahead with the lab diagnosis. Now, for diagnosis of infective endocarditis as a whole, you have to follow Duke's criteria, and a very important role which the microbiology lab plays in the patient management is the report of a blood culture of the patient. Right, as in this particular question, the blood culture of the patient grew Cardiobacterium hominis. So culture is a very critical element in the diagnosis of infective endocarditis. Now, do remember, if you are suspecting Hessek organism endocarditis, the culture plates need to be incubated for 30 days if we are going for a conventional culture. But these days, thankfully, automated methods like Bactalert are available, which give us a positive result in as short a duration as 1 week. Okay, so culture is very important. Now, apart from culture, we've got molecular methods also available like polymerase chain reaction. Okay, polymerase chain reaction, wherein we can detect the 16S ribosomal rRNA gene followed by sequencing, or we can go for multiplex PCR or multiplex real-time PCR. So we can do detection of one or more members of the Hesse group by PCR. Now, lastly, about the treatment aspect. Now, guys, this is the good news about Hesse endocarditis is that the patients do well with antibiotics. Surgery is not needed. Okay, surgery is not needed, and the drug which we antibiotic which we usually go for is ceftriaxone. 2 grams per day is the dose. This is the DOC drug of choice. Remember, we are trying to treat. We try to treat. Try should remind you of ceftriaxone. We are trying to treat these sort of rare organisms which are responsible for 3% cases of endocarditis with the help of ceftriaxone. Now, there are certain exceptions to this general rule. That is, if Eichinella corrodens has been isolated, then go for ampicillin, and quinolone should be given if the strain is found to be a beta-lactamase producer. Right, and you should also be aware of the duration of therapy for which the antibiotics are supposed to be prescribed. Remember, the duration of therapy should be 4 weeks for native valve endocarditis and 6 weeks for prosthetic valve endocarditis. Remember, chauka and chakka in cricket. For native, the duration is shorter, and for prosthetic valve, the duration is longer. Even if you forget, it is N and B, it's coming in alphabetical order, and logically also, prosthetic valves are more likely to get infected. So just treat the prosthetic valve endocarditis cases for a longer duration. Okay, just in case you get confused which one was 4 weeks, which one was 6 weeks. So I hope this video helps. Any queries are welcome in the comment section. Thank you for watching. Study well. God bless you all.